How's everybody doing? Shout out to my man Goldmouth and forcing me to get on live now. But what I wanted to talk about, I had an event yesterday. I had an vending event that I went to here locally in Huntsville, and I always love like vending events, right? Because I get to go out and just really speak to the people, right? I get to go into details about different books and why I recommend different books to people, and I can give them like a specific feedback on the different books. And one thing I noticed, shout out to Miss Karen, she was there at the event yesterday. Um, One thing I noticed is the feedback that I get whenever I have a book called Black Mental Health Matters by Aaron Snyder. And it's a book that focuses on mental health from our perspective, right? From black perspective. He's a black psychiatrist who speaks about different traumas and how to notice different traumas in us, right? How to notice it in ourselves. And, he speaks about how, post-traumatic stress syndrome can come from anywhere. It can come from seeing a dead body, which I think a lot of us, we look at trauma from a first person perspective, such as, you see a dead body or a friend of yours gets killed and you see the immediate reaction, right? Or you're in a car and unfortunately you get in a car accident, somebody next to you dies and you see it, right? We look at it as a first person perspective. And what he speaks about is that it doesn't have to be that. It can be that you hear about violence or you hear about a certain situation and you have to process that in your own mind, and that can come out as as a trauma, right? Because you hear about it, you see that it's real. You heard somebody speak about somebody getting hurt. You have to process that yourself, and that comes out as trauma. And one thing I noticed is when black men see the book and they read the words Black Mental Health Matters, their entire body changes, right? It's really an amazing thing. And they kind of exhale a little bit, right? And it's like they have a sense of, I look in their eyes and they have like a sense of, I've been looking for this for so long, right? Like I've been looking for a way to speak about my mental health and my emotions and traumas all my life. When they look at the book, right? And when I start talking about the book, I speak about, hey, we all have traumas that we go through. And one thing that whenever I speak to Aaron Snyder, I'll have him on soon to speak about black mental health as well. But when I had him on earlier, before a couple months ago, he spoke about how, we all have traumas from just being black in America or black wherever, black in the diaspora, wherever. We have traumas that are from birth, right? Because trauma literally affects the DNA and changes the DNA of a person. So if your grandmother had trauma, which all of ours had, that changes her DNA. That changes your mother's DNA, changes your DNA, so on and so forth. Because trauma literally changes the DNA of a person. So we're still processing the traumas from our great grandmothers, our great grandfathers, right? So we're still processing trauma from sharecroppers and slavery. Literally slavery is what we're still living through. And when I speak to people and I tell them, hey, he speaks about trauma, like black men have this look on their face that, and then they have this natural wonder about the book. And what happens, I can only speak to my experience from selling this book for the last year and a half, is that they have a reaction when I tell them about the book and I tell them what the book highlights and how it tells us how we can process these different traumas so that we don't bleed them on to the next generation. They hear the words and then their natural reaction is a lot of times they put the book down. There's like, maybe they're not ready to process some of that trauma, and then they start looking for other books. And then what happens is if they have a woman with them, they have a black woman with them. The black woman then follows them and immediately grabs the book, buys the book, gives the book to the black man. Right? This is, I'm telling you, it's only my experience I can speak to, but this is what I've seen as a trend when I speak to black men about mental health and about trauma. And it really just, like yesterday, it sent me on a long, I guess, thought bubble, I guess we can call it, to where how, you just think about mental health from a black man's perspective, right? And as a black man myself who has had battles with mental health, it's a scary place, and it's a lonely place, and it's a isolated place, and a lot of times it's isolated by choice, right? Where we separate ourselves from our loved ones, and we think that in order to be a man, we have to think through it ourselves. We got to figure it out, right? Hey, we just go figure it out. Have a drink, smoke, whatever you do. Go to the gym, figure it out. Just deal with it yourself. And that comes from a lifetime of being told our emotions are something that we should ignore, right? You're 3 or 4 years old and you're told, stop crying, be a man, right? Fall down, you scrape your knee, you start crying. You're told to be a man. Right? When you're 4 years old, you get upset, you feel a bit of jealousy or rage or something like that. And your parent tells you, be a man, be a big boy. So you're told be a big boy when you're crying. So that obviously this separates a baby from a big boy, is the ability to ignore my emotions, right? Sometimes we lack the language to articulate that there is something wrong. Exactly. And that comes from, you're looking at, by the time you're 25, 27 years old, that's 20 something years of being told to ignore your emotions. That's 20 something years of being told that the way you're feeling about things does not matter, right? Then you become old enough to no longer be able to ignore those emotions, and you can't turn anything off. Now you bleed out in front of everybody, right? Isolate yourself. Like I said, we don't have the language to speak to our emotions, so we end up coming home and needing a drink, and we blow up at the people that we're closest to, and we don't want people to talk to us, right? We walk around in a traumatized state to where we're not totally present with our family. We're not present with in the moment with our people, because when we go to work, we have to put this mask on, right? We have to hide so much of who we are. That comes when we touch the door to walk out of the door. We change the way we walk, right? We turn our music down when we're about 5 minutes away from the office. That's when the mask is starting to come on, right? We walk different when we go into the office. So then we're in the office for so long that the mask, it becomes suffocating. Then we come home and we take the mask off, and we're frustrated from having to wear the mask. We're frustrated from not being able to process our emotions because we had the mask on. So now we're just a ball of emotion, and we don't know how to start to unravel that, right? And I can only speak from my perspective and things that I've gone through personally and things that I've noticed, right? So I can't speak for every man, because we're not a monolith. But and then we end up kind of being lost, right? Because, and it comes out in so many different ways, right? I remember I thought that by isolating myself that I was doing it the right way, because I'm not going off on people, but I'm withholding myself from my family, from my children. I'm not speaking, but I'm like, okay, I'm doing good though. I'm not getting drunk every night. But you're comparing things to the worst possible outcome, right? When the right thing to do is start to unpack a lot of that and speak about your emotions and speak about how you feel. And a lot of times as black men, we don't ever want to be perceived as weak, because we've been told for so long the only thing that we have is our ability to cause violence. And then we have is our bravado, is our toughness, right? The only asset we have is the threat of violence, is what we've been told for so long. You know what I mean? And so if we admit to being human, we think that we are losing some of our masculinity. We think that we are sacrificing some of that macho-ness when we admit to just being human, right? To just being frustrated, just being upset, just feeling lonely, feeling depressed, whatever it is. We refuse to admit that, even to ourselves. You know what I mean? And so whenever I talk to men at these like vending events, I see so many emotions come through their face when they look at a book like Black Mental Health Matters. And I just see it go from one emotion to the next. Just boom, boom, boom. And you see their eyes just darting all around, right? And like I said, a lot of times they put the book down because it's a lot to have to deal with. It's so much to have to deal with and to have to be honest with yourself and unpack. You know what I mean? And like I said, it's lonely, you know, because you have to look at yourself. You got to deal with yourself. You got to figure out where you went wrong at. And you have to admit that you went wrong somewhere. And it could have been 15 years ago that you went wrong and you just continued going wrong. And just because everybody around you is also in a space where they're trying to figure things out, or they're in a space where they're handling things wrong, you have to be able to isolate yourself from that as well. You know what I mean? So it's always interesting when I see, you know, when I talk to people about books. You know, it's always an eye-opening thing for me. Whenever I do it as much as I can. You know what I mean? I love being a vendor and being able to talk to people about books. Because I can be honest, books saved my life. You know what I mean? I'm a child of a single parent, of a single mother, you know. And I didn't know how to be a father. And so when it was time for me to be a father, the people around me were not the best examples of being a father, right? Because the people around me were trying to learn themselves. So I had to look to books to learn the ins and outs and the different strategies and philosophies. And I messed up a million times, but I had to look to these books as well as my brother just to figure out, you know, how to do this thing called fatherhood. So I speak so passionately about books because they literally saved me, right? And they continue to save me. The book Black Mental Health Matters saved me. I read it in 2020 when I was in a really, really, really dark space, you know, mentally, dealing with the pandemic and everything. So the book saved me. So I speak very passionately to everybody about the book because I think it's something that we as men, we have to figure out our mental health so that we can be better brothers, better husbands, fathers, cousins, managers, you know what I mean? Friends. We got to figure it out. And we can't continue just to lean on women. We can't just continue to lean on black women to fight our demons for us, right? Because black women have demons that they're fighting. They're in a system as well. A harsher one than we are because they have to deal with racism and sexism and the intersection of that. So we can't continue just to keep saying, help me fight my demons and figure this out, or that's just how I am and you got to deal with it. We can't continue to do that because it's killing us, it's killing them, it's killing us together, right? So we have to figure that out. Another thing that I noticed about men in my age bracket and a little bit older is that when I speak about a book called Long Shot by Craig Hodges, Craig Hodges was, to simplify it, he was Kaepernick before Kaepernick, right? He when the Bulls won the championship in I believe in '92, they went to the White House. You remember, and before Trump came into office, it was customary that if you win the championship in any sport, your team went to the White House. You know what I mean? It was not even thought about that you would skip going to the White House. It's just not what you did. And so what Craig Hodges did is he wore a dashiki and he gave President George Bush a handwritten note on how to care for the black community. And what happened is he got banned from the league. Craig Hodges was a activist for unions. He was very critical of Nike. And another thing he did was he went to Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan right after the riots in LA. And he suggested that we boycott game 1 of the NBA Finals. And Magic Johnson looked him in the face and said, "Nigga, you crazy." And Jordan said, "Don't ever talk to me like that again, right? About boycotting anything. I'm not doing it." And then when he got banned from the league, he was a member of the Chicago Bulls. So he reached out to Michael Jordan, who by this time in 92, he's the face of the entire NBA. This is the middle of Air Jordan era. And Michael Jordan refused to answer his calls. He didn't give him any answers about what was going on. He wouldn't kind of work with him to try to get him back in the league. And when I tell that story to people my age, they immediately put this bad boy back down. You know what I mean? I think a lot of it is because of the godlike or iconic figure that is Michael Jordan. Everybody loved Jordan, right? So then he's a hero to so many people my age and a little bit older that we refuse to be critical of him, right? We refuse to see any kind of error in his ways. We refuse to see that he was a victim as well and that he made decisions against his people, right? And they don't want to buy it. They don't want a piece of it. And I'm not here to bash Michael Jordan, but it's one thing I'm here to talk about is a philosophy that we can't be critical of those that we look up to. We have to be honest about people that we love. You know what I mean? And we have to be honest about mistakes that our iconic figures have made through time. You know what I mean? Huey P. Newton, letting sexism erode the Black Panther Party from the inside. Martin Luther King being so headstrong into integration, right? We have to be able to be critical of these movements so that we can learn from properly. So we have to research them so we can learn from them properly so that we can make adjustments in how we move forward, because the struggle still continues, as we all know. So we have to be able to do that. You know what I mean? And it seems like, nobody wants to look at Jordan a different way than we look at him. I'm just over here babbling, by the way. So if anybody wants to join me and talk a little bit, send a request in, and we can do that by all means. But I've been in this book space for about 3.5 to 4 years, and it's the reactions that I get from people is really amazing, right? They always say, "Oh wow, you're a black bookseller. Oh wow, I've been looking for you." And one thing that I'm very intentional on doing is anytime I'm at an event, I wear my chains. Anytime I'm on live, I wear my chains. I don't change the way I speak. I don't try to cram all these big words into my speech because I want people to understand. I'm just regular. You know what I mean? I'm a regular dude, because I think a lot of times when we go through school, in high school, grade school, the quote unquote intelligent people are separated. They're separated from people, right? They're thrown into these accelerated classes. They're thrown into these talented and gifted classes, right? And they're separated. So they're put on a pedestal, and I was in some of these classes. They tell us they tell you that you're not like them, right? You're different than them. And so sometimes people start to look at, people that are quote unquote, nerds or anything like that, in a sense of anger, because society tells them that they're not intelligent. And so they start to kind of say, well, if I'm not, what makes that person different than me? So I always try to immediately show people that we're all on the same plane, right? And we're all intelligent. We're all geniuses, because we have to navigate this world as Black people. So we're all geniuses. So, there's no such thing as I'm smarter than you. That just doesn't exist in my mind, right? We're all very, very intelligent in different areas. Um, I might just read a little more, but hell, I always make sure I talk about in reality TV and all that because I do all that shit too, right? I do all that. I waste time on YouTube just like the next person, right? Watch Country Wayne, all that good shit. So I always try to break that barrier down between us and let people know, um, that we're all just regular folks.